Olá, estamos de volta com a trilha de rádio do Set Experience Academy no módulo DRM. Neste segmento, Alexander irá nos apresentar as características técnicas da plataforma e os resultados obtidos nos testes na Índia. Alexander.
And let's keep in mind that when we say FM band or VHF bands, including the FM band, that also means the extended FM band. DRM actually is available, suitable, and working on all the frequencies above 30 megahertz up to 230 megahertz. So these are the bands we are looking at, including the extended FM band. Keep in mind, single standard, all the key features that you saw presented earlier, explained by Ruxandra and shown in the video, in the first video, they are identically available, whether it's shortwave, medium wave, or the VHF bands. These are core to DRM. But DRM has modes, transmission modes, specifically designed and optimized for the FM VHF bands. And this is what we're looking at the moment. If you imagine you have an existing 10 kilowatt, quite high power FM transmitter, covering a certain area, a certain city, for example, and consuming 200 kilohertz of bandwidth on air. What would be the equivalent in DRM? Well, the equivalent would be roughly saving 90% of transmission power. A 1 kilowatt, maybe 2 kilowatt, that's all you need in terms of power consumption to get roughly the same coverage area, depending, of course, on the exact scenario that you want to cover. However, that DRM transmission only occupies half the bandwidth on air compared with analog FM. Instead of 200 kilohertz as a minimum bandwidth for analog FM, DRM has a fixed bandwidth of 96 kilohertz in the VHF bands. Plus, as Ruxandra mentioned earlier for the AM bands, that provides capacity for up to 3 radio programs plus multimedia content within that same transmission. The next element I want to look at is if you have a station that is that already exists on air, analog stations, and there are gaps in between, you can place the DRM transmissions in those gaps, not interfering with the existing ongoing analog FM transmissions. In this particular case here, that shows the situation in India and some Asian countries. In Sao Paulo, for example, in Rio, the frequency band, the FM band, is crowded. So you have two options. If there are gaps in this band, even gaps where another analog station would not fit, that could be sufficient for another DRM service with up to 3 programs in that band. And we have the good examples from South Africa, where within the spectrum of the biggest cities, Johannesburg, we have actually found and identified 16 of those gaps. The band is completely crowded, no more space for another analog service, no way. But there are 16 places where additional DRM signals can fit because they only need 100 kilohertz and they can sit right next to analog stations, even with much higher power. And this gives you up to 48 additional audio programs, capacity for additional audio programs in the FM band. So all the existing FM broadcasters have a chance to also broadcast during the transition period in digital, start with digital right away. Another option is obviously to look at the extended FM band, which would make sense, a lot of sense to use in full digital mode right from the beginning. And the way that can work is shown here, where you have 2 blocks of DRM sitting side by side. That's a way of more efficiently using the existing infrastructure. In this particular case, the 2 blocks side by side, to enable that, those 2 blocks of DRM need to be originating from the same transmitter. That's shown in this diagram. And that's a new operation mode for DRM in the VHF bands and might be the perfect solution to most efficiently and cost-effectively use and introduce digital radio in the extended FM band. Let's have a look at this example. You have one high power transmitter for an analog station. One transmitter, one FM program, that's the norm today. You have a low power transmitter for the same coverage with a single DRM transmission. Keep in mind, carrying up to 3 services plus multimedia. But then the new mode is that a single transmitter, FM band transmitter, can carry multiple DRM blocks. originating, amplified from a single transmitter, sitting side by side in the spectrum. So in this particular case, within 200 kilohertz, you can carry up to 6 audio programs plus several multimedia elements and services. The input signal to that transmitter, MDI, the standardized digital multiplex signal, SDL4 for DRM, that can originate from the same broadcaster, giving it more capacity with a single transmitter, or it can even originate from independent broadcasters. Let's say you have 2 local service providers, or a local station and a community station. They can each run their independent, own, and self-configured content server, DRM head-end system, creating their own and controlling their own MDI in their studio, and then combining those 2 signals onto the same shared transmitter for cost savings. And to prove that this is not just a theoretical option, we just recently put this configuration on air in India, in Delhi. To give you a quick background of what happened in Delhi, in February and March of this year, there was a major demonstration and trial of DRM in the FM band in both Delhi and the neighboring city of Jaipur. We showed during multiple workshops all the features, advanced features of DRM, both in terms of spectrum in the FM band, but also in terms of functionality. We showed simulcast operation along with analog, feeding DRM in the white spaces in between existing analog stations, and using those additional high capacity multi-DRM configurations. Some of the examples of the content that were put on air are shown here: advanced journal line, Unicode, surround sound information, all of that was presented. Emergency warning functionality with live announcements were presented, with live creation of the events at the studio site from a common CAP source, a common alerting protocol, which DRM is fully integrated with. And surround sound, as I mentioned, as another feature. The traffic and travel information was used and demonstrated in detail, where you can show the current road congestions, not just as a little text information or a symbol on the map, but with detailed information of expected delays and so on, or in this case, travel information with rest area information and so on. The coverage we achieved is given here as one example. In the top right corner, you see the transmitter side, and then we have a coverage with only 100 watts of DRM power in the FM band, ERP. After 24.7 kilometers, we actually stopped the transmission because there were individual dropouts. So the realistic coverage would have gone even further. And this is the example of the different configurations shown in simulcast, where we show that and demonstrate that a single transmitter can operate analog FM and DRM on the side. In this case, with a 600 kilohertz FM transmitter capable of a bandwidth of 600 kilohertz, we can have up to 4 independent DRM signals and 1 analog FM service. Those 4 DRM signals carrying up to 12 audio programs plus 4 multimedia services journal line. Or if we say we leave the FM transmitters that exist today, the analog FM transmitters, don't touch them. That's our recommended way of introducing DRM. And then we place small power independent DRM transmitters onto the same combiner using the existing transmitter installations, antenna system, all of that. In this case, we can make use of these advanced, very efficient configurations of DRM to put DRM signals on air. In this case, you can see an example of 2 independent DRM signals being placed side by side, amplified with a single FM band transmitter, 4 and 6 configurations within 600 kilohertz, and even those 6 configurations at different power levels, or some of them being not available at all. You have all these capabilities. So what we are showing here, this is a live recording from the on-air signals in Delhi, configurations with up to 18 audio programs plus 6 multimedia journal line services from a single DRM FM band transmitter, and only occupying 600 kilohertz of bandwidth on air. I think that is something really worth considering for populating, for configuring the extended band, the extended FM band services, to use that new opportunity very efficiently. We also demonstrated how DRM signals can be placed with this dedicated DRM transmitter in between existing analog FM stations, ongoing FM services not being touched. in this case, with a separation of those FM services at 800 kilohertz, meaning a gap of 600 kilohertz, we could easily place 5 DRM signals with a total bandwidth of 500 kilohertz in between, and we were not affecting at all any of the ongoing analog services. And at the same time, we had perfect coverage for those FM transmissions, giving you 15 additional audio services. As you know, India today, just as a reminder, is one of the biggest digital radio deployments in the world. They already have installed 38 transmitters operating in DRM, partly now with full DRM, digital DRM only, and at certain times only during the day in simulcast mode. The equivalent is roughly 8 megawatts of power in analog AM. So you see what the savings DRM can achieve, bringing that number down, how important that is for the overall bill of that broadcasters annually. Today, if all these transmitters operate in pure DRM mode, they serve more than 900 million people out of the 1.3 billion population of India. Already, those 38 only. And with only a few more transmitters, you have then the full national coverage. Also on the receiver side, there's great news from India. More than 3 million cars are now on the road in India with DRM built in as a native feature. People don't have to pay anything extra. DRM comes as a default feature of the radio sets in those cars.
Obrigado, Alexander. E na sequência, nós veremos o status do DRM no mundo e a indústria de receptores.